disconnected it.
Do you hear me fine?
Yeah, how are you doing?
Good. I'm well, thanks. We get to get set up here. How's the framing look? Okay?
Yeah, it looks great.
Good.
Love the backdrop.
Yeah, we have the tropical garden outside.
That's amazing. That's amazing. What state are you in right now?
We're in Miami.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, that's great. Is everyone staying safe?
Yeah, we are. You know, it's very quiet here. Everything is shut down. There's a lot of rules and restrictions, which is okay. People are being safe, but it's starting to open up, which is nice too.
That's good. That's good to hear. How's the quarantine been for you? Have you learned anything new? What have you done so far?
Yeah, I think you always learn through new experiences. This is a pretty dramatic new experience, so there's an opportunity to learn a lot. You also figure out that you can procrastinate because you think you have all this time to do stuff. It's very easy to put things off. So I was going to learn to get a lot better at Spanish, which is useful in Miami. I haven't really gotten around to that yet. There's books I wanted to read that I haven't done. But no, I'm making use of the time. I think it's nice to disconnect. It's nice to be still. I feel really lucky that I can continue to work from home. A lot of people don't have that option. So gratitude is a big part of every day for me because I realize I have a really good situation.
That's great. I'm actually in my third year of Spanish this year, so that's good to hear. When did you start speaking Spanish?
Oh, no, I've spoken Spanish off and on since I was like your age in school, but
wow.
it gets very rusty when you don't use it. You know, hablo un poco, pero en Miami, you know, yo debo más español. So I need to do much better, be much more fluent because Spanish is like a co-first language here when you communicate with a lot of people. So we do this, and a year from now I'll be fluid.
That's good to hear. That's great to hear. Well, I picked up a little bit of juggling during this quarantine. So just got bored, picked up 3 tennis balls, and started doing some of this. And you know, I slowly learned a little bit.
Good. That's a good skill. I hope that like you can use that skill post quarantine because ideally, you know, I've gotten a lot better at grilling, cooking. I meant to get a lot better at cooking, but down here you grill more than you cook. So I haven't made big progress in that area, but there's still time. So
that's good. What's your favorite dish to cook?
Stir fry. It goes back to college, man. I kept it pretty simple. I like to put in chicken or shrimp or something and do stir fry. That's pretty easy. I mean, I keep it pretty simple. I like to grill outside. I'm better at grilling than cooking. I'd say indoor cooking, my skills are a 3 on 1 to 10, and grilling, I'm a solid 6 or 7. Not an expert, but good enough.
That's good to hear. Well, I got to get you to follow me, man. I see you haven't followed me yet.
I do follow you.
You do? Okay.
Yeah.
Yesterday didn't say.
Maybe I jumped on yesterday, but I do follow you.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear. Now let's actually. I interviewed RJ Barrett, who speaks fluent French. So I'm gonna play. I think you speak a little bit of French, right?
Je parle un peu, but I spoke better when I covered French Open for 15 years, and I went to the Tour de France as a fan for a lot of years, but I spoke much better French then, and my wife's pretty good, but yeah, that skill has eroded, sadly.
Do you want me to play a clip of RJ and see if you can translate what he's saying?
Sure.
All right.
That's...
Oh. Did you hear that? I'll play it one more time. Could you understand what he said there?
Actually, I don't know if the audio was kind of cutting out. That's my excuse anyway. I couldn't really hear the audio very well. What did he say?
He was saying that I asked him a question about, you know, how his family heritage and his background with his aunt and his dad in sports, how that helped him to get to the level he's at. And he said it helped me a lot because I'm blessed naturally in my features.
Yeah, no, I think I think your background always helps you. I mean, I think that's a good answer. I wish I'd heard it. It didn't come through well. I promise you I'll get better at French too. That's more of a situation. I've never taken any formal schooling in French. Had a tutor for a couple times, but it's more about just being there. And obviously French is a language of pronunciation, and the grammar is extremely exacting. It's difficult to get the grammar right, but the vocabulary is so close to English, and so many words are from French. So vocabulary is actually not that hard, but sounding like you're authentically French, not screwing up the grammar, is really hard.
Yeah, I'll bet. Now, I know you love traveling, and you said one of your favorite places to go is Paris. What are some of your other tops?
Well, I mean, I like places where the power of nature is really enormous. For me, the Himalayas, Nepal was a life-changing place to go, trekking through the mountains around Everest. We climbed a couple smaller mountains near Everest and went to Everest Base Camp. But just being exposed to that culture and seeing that way of life was really inspiring. And the scenery is just jaw-dropping. I'm someone that grew up, I was a nerd about mountains. I had pictures on my wall of mountains when I was a kid. And to see them in person was overwhelming. I'm going to go back there soon. Africa is a place where I had a deep connection. I love wildlife. And I think, again, when you make that first trip there, it can be life-changing. Your eyes are opened to all kinds of new things, to people and the wildlife. And so, I mean, those two places are for me the most powerful experience I've had, just because I feel most alive when I'm in nature, and the nature in both those places is so beautiful. I've been lucky enough to be all over different parts of Africa. Had a trip to see the mountain gorillas in Rwanda, canceled by the pandemic, but we'll reschedule that and get that done. That's number one on my wish list for sure. But I love all kinds of places. But as you say, Paris, I love Spain, I love Italy. Greece has been a place my wife and I have gone many times. I like going to the Caribbean. I mean, I feel like New Zealand, Australia, I've been there many times. Yeah, I feel like the world is huge, and the list of places I want to go is long, and there's not enough time to go to all of them. So it's a lifelong quest, work in progress.
What's the craziest animal encounter you had within all the places that you've been through?
Oh, man. Well, in Africa, I was chased by an elephant, both on foot and in a vehicle, separate incidents. Chase on foot was a lot scarier. It was in Botswana. The elephant was close to our camp. I ran back to my tent to get my camera to come back and photograph him. On the way back from the tent to the camp, he was coming this way, and I ran into him on the path coming at me. And he wasn't sprinting, but elephants cover ground quickly. And he was coming at me in a hurry. You're not supposed to freak out and run. Well, forget that. I forget what you're supposed to do. When you see that animal coming at you, I turned around and I ran in the opposite direction, and I ducked into a path and went around to the other side of my tent. It just kind of like waited it out. He stopped right there and started eating a branch of a tree like right above my tent, like very leisurely. He wasn't aggressive, but my heart was still pounding. And after the animal moved on, I realized that I had wrenched my back. Every muscle in my body just tensed up, and I had actually wrenched my back because of that. And I had to stretch to work it out. But being chased on foot, or being on foot in the presence of animals, is a whole nother experience than being in a vehicle, where you're sort of in their environment, but you're in a car. They don't see you as part of the food chain. They don't see you even as a human. They're not sure what to make of a car full of people. When they see a human on the ground, they know what that means. Mm-hmm. And it's a whole nother proposition. So you got to be really careful.
I was actually in India a couple years ago, and we went to the Jim Corbett Park, which is full of all kinds of animals. And we were actually in a safari car, and we were going down some path somewhere. There was an elephant in the way, and that elephant was mad. So it started like making noise and started charging at us. So we had to, I think we went straight back in reverse. So we just reversed out of there.
They make a big show of aggression. I got chased in a vehicle. I was just hanging out myself alone with the driver, and I was sitting up in the back seat of a Land Rover taking pictures. He was very chilled, this big bull elephant, for a long time. Then he decided, you know what, I've had enough. I've had enough of your pictures. And he just came up at the vehicle and was running down the road. And the driver, fortunately, was really alert. And he fired the car, got the engine going. And we were just kind of, like, as you said, you're back. I was like backing up as he was coming toward me, and we outran him. But it was an adrenaline rush there for a few seconds, for sure.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, I saw that you had a flu game similar to the Michael Jordan flu game when you were covering the 2018 National Championship. How in the world does someone call a game when you're feeling sick?
The show must go on, so you just do it. I mean, that's a hell of a lot easier than playing a basketball game when you had the flu like Michael did. And I wish I'd done my job as well as he did his job when his flu game. Now, what was unfortunate was that when you're that sick, you really can't enjoy the experience. It's about getting through the broadcast. And you get a game that good, you might never have a championship game again decided in overtime on the last play. And my only regret is that I didn't enjoy the experience more. And afterward, I was a little bit blurry. I didn't even remember parts of the game, which is unusual because I usually have a really good recall. When you call the game, it's kind of printed in your mind, especially right afterward. There were parts of the game, like, what happened then? And I was just, usually, by the way, the season is over, so you have a big celebration party for the crew and everybody. I couldn't even barely take part in that. I made an appearance. I got to go lay down. I felt awful, but no, it happens. I think in 30 years of doing this, there had been a handful of times when I really had to play sick, but fortunately not very often.
And I can tell you about a time I was supposed to, last second during the national championship this year, I was given access to some press conferences with LSU and with Clemson. And I had like 104 fever, and I was debating so hard. We were
104?
Yeah, 103,
Wow.
104, and we were debating if we should try to go drive out to Louisiana, which we're in Michigan, so that's about 16, 17 hours in the car. And I was thinking if we had planned this earlier and we had a plane ride, I would go all for it. But in the car for
No
16.
way. That's a whole different deal. I was already in Atlanta. I just can't. I got sick that day, but there's no other way. You have to. I'm sure you're going to face a situation where you're going to have to just work really sick. That's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
You just have to power through it. I mean, and sometimes when you're feeling a little under the weather, it can make you focus sharper. That's what Jordan has talked about in that famous flu game. I mean, he was physically exhausted, but in trying to overcome that, you're focused very much on your performance. And I didn't find that I really struggled to call the game. One or two mistakes, nobody's perfect, but I got through it okay. It was just how I felt afterward, and the fact that I really couldn't enjoy it. You can get through it, but it doesn't mean you're enjoying it.
Yeah. Well, someone could call The Voice because, you have a spectacular voice calling these games. Do you think NBC maybe called their show after you, The Voice, huh?
I don't think so. I think that's very nice. Thank you. That's not something you can really work on. That's a born thing. So I'm pleased that people like it. I think it's a lot of the job becomes increasingly more about your voice and less about your on-camera presence when you're calling games. For a long time, I did on-camera stuff, studio stuff, where it was much more about being on camera than it was your voice.
Yeah.
But then over the years, when you do narration or you call games, I'm finding that I'm much more recognizable by people if they hear me speak than if they see me. So that's how that changes over time when you become mainly a play-by-play guy.
Wow. Well, also on NBC, you wanted to cover the Olympics, and you love Kentucky Derby. So I guess there's three things.
Well, listen, NBC. I mean, that's a company that I've always admired. There was a couple of times in my career when I might have entertained the idea of going there, but that was a long time ago. The Olympics has always been a thing for me. I watched the Olympics when I was a little kid. I thought it was amazing storytelling. I still love the Olympics. I think people either get the Olympics or they don't. And plenty of sports fans, they don't really get it. They much prefer team sports, and that's okay. But I mean, for me, I always loved the global aspect of the Olympics. I love the fact that athletes had poured so much of their life into that one moment to either perform or choke. And the drama there for me is just amazing. So I did want to host the Olympics or call events at the Olympics for a long time, but with ESPN and ABC not having the rights, I'm very much at peace with that. But and I think you'll find too that your life goals really change a lot over time, and you think this is what I want to do, and you realize that job isn't what you thought it was when you first dreamt about it. That's changed, and then your goals have changed, and the situation has changed. So to be able to get championship events, my two favorite sports, which are college football and tennis. So they're like co-favorite sports for me. To be able to call the championship events in both sports is freaking amazing. I mean, for me, it really is living the dream. And so I'm not thinking about anything else. Or hosting the World Cup for me was a huge struggle. I also love soccer, but I don't want to call soccer games. I'm not qualified for that, in my opinion. I can host it. And for me, that was just a beautiful thing to host the the World Cup in South Africa, where country I'd spent a lot of time.
Well, actually, one of my biggest goals is to be able to be an Olympic sideline reporter. So I have two goals within the next 5 years.
Like what sport? What are you thinking? Are you thinking about a specific sport, or what kind of thing? And why sideline reporter? Why not call the game or host the game? Why is your goal focused in on sideline reporting?
See, the thing for me is, like, I feel like, especially being an analyst, you're calling the game, sometimes you do have to have a lot of knowledge and know a lot of things. And for me as a kid, I feel like a sideline reporter is something that's not such a technical thing that nobody else can do. And I've mastered the skill of sideline reporting over the past 2 years. So I've done about 1,000 interviews. Well, I wouldn't say I've mastered the skill. I've gotten a lot better at it over the past 2 years, talking to the top names in the past 2 years: Zion Williamson, Magic Johnson, Patrick.
I've seen your work. You're very calm. You're very confident. It's good. But I think you're right. You checked yourself. You said not mastered the skill. And it's right to think that, because I think we're always a work in progress. I mean, I haven't mastered the skill of calling games. I felt like in the specific show of Game Day, 25 years, I probably hit a standard. It was going to be hard to sort of keep raising the bar. The challenge became maintaining the standard. But that was a specific gig over a quarter century. Everything else, I feel like you're always trying to improve. You have to improve. And I think that you have the sense of that. What you've done is awesome. And you show a great amount of polish, not just for your age, but for someone who's much older. But I think you have the humility to know you got a long way to go. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can always improve on. I think if we have the mindset that not only can we get better, but we need to get better, that's really healthy. And all things in life, not just your job.
Yeah, and I'd say I'm nowhere close to mastering a skill. I mean, I've been doing this for 2 years, and I've learned so much. But if you can learn that much in 2 years, imagine how much more you still have to learn.
That's a great attitude. That's going to serve you well.
Well, as far as Kentucky Derby goes, I feel like me, Kirk Herbstreit, and you should buy a horse. But I can't afford the horse, so I'll buy the brush, and then we can share the winnings. Does that sound good?
I was going to say, no, I mean, we have to work out the business part of it. What else can you bring to it besides brushing the horse, though? Can you spot a good horse to buy? I mean, first of all, can you read a racing form? I mean, are you like a thoroughbred racing fan, or are you just like to watch one race a year on NBC?
I like to watch pretty much just the Kentucky Derby.
Well, it's an interesting sport. I mean, there's so much to it. When I started to cover it, the last thing I wanted to do was try to come across as a know-it-all. I'd always been a fan of the horses. I like to go to the track. I would go rent a house in Del Mar in California and go to the racetrack for a week with a bunch of friends, share the costs and share the experience. That was a lot of fun. But, when you're hosting a Derby or the Breeders' Cup, which I did, or go to Dubai to host the Dubai World Cup, which you did a couple of times, the last thing you want to do is come across like a know-it-all. So I deferred to the experts. What you'll find is, whether for me it was horse racing, NASCAR, X Games, I wasn't an expert in any of that stuff. So I didn't try to be. I tried to be enthusiastic. That was natural for me. And you just convey enthusiasm. That goes a long way. Nobody's expecting you to be an expert in everything you step into. If you don't try to be, if you don't try to come off as one.
Yeah.
But if you say, hey, I'm here, this is exciting, I'm enthused about this, I've done the homework, I've prepped, but I'm not going to try to come off like an expert. And and you set up the experts. When I did horse racing, I worked with Jerry Bailey, a brilliant jockey, Randy Moss, Janine Edwards. These are people who were experts. They lived horse racing 365. And even they would have a hard time knowing which horse to buy, by the way. What you're talking about, you think it's easy to go to a yearling sale and look at this 1-year-old horse and say, in 2 years, I got me a Derby winner. You can forget it, brother. That's like scratching a lottery ticket. Just so you know that. You don't buy horses to make money. You buy horses to have a dream, but you don't expect it to come true.
Yeah. Yep. And now I could say, too, I've covered NASCAR, golf, soccer. Those are sports that I really have not watched that much. And so being a kid, I try to bring a different perspective versus
Yeah.
try to act like I know what I'm talking about. And when they say certain terms, I don't try to be like, yeah, I know what that is if you really don't. So I think it's important that you bring to the table what you know and always being unique about what you're asking too, because one thing I've picked up great advice is that you want to ask a question that nobody else is asking.
Right. No, I think it shows in your work, and I think someone gave you some pretty solid advice. I think that maybe early on, when I see some of the tapes, you're trying desperately to show you belong. I mean, you're full on dressing like an adult sportscaster, and the questions are more tailored that way because you need to, or you feel you need to project that credibility. Like, take me seriously. I'm not some punk kid. I know what I've done this for a while, but I think as you gain more confidence and more assurance, you don't have to prove that you know what you're doing, and therefore you can feel the freedom to kind of act your age and present yourself as not a typical 30 or 40 something year old reporter, but somebody who's bringing a different perspective to it. You have a good sense of that. Don't lose that. Okay. That'll serve you well.
I appreciate that. That's great advice. And so speaking of those unique things, there's one unique thing that I do here with pretty much everyone I interview, and that's a flip the switch. So now I'm going to start that segment.
Okay.
All right. Time for you to ask me some questions. Let's go.
Who is the most disappointing person? Nick, and I'm going to answer this, by the way. I might ask you a tough question. The most disappointing person, if you don't want to say the name, give me a hint. Have you had this great idea? It would be awesome to meet this person, this athlete, or it could be a coach, or it could be a non-sports person, and yet the reality didn't match up with what you'd hoped? Because that happens to all of us.
Yeah, I'd say.
Give me a hint. Just give me a hint.
I'll just tell you who it was. Russell Wilson. So at the Pro Bowl, I'm not sure what it was. Every player was willing to talk. So after the game, we went up to Russell and we tried to talk to him, and he just kind of blew me off and left. And so that was someone who I looked up to, and I mean, I still do. I'm sure it could have just been the day. Like some athletes, you don't know.
Yeah. Did he win or lose the game?
Yeah, I think they lost. It was the Pro Bowl, but.
Yeah, but still, Russell's a very competitive guy. I covered him at 2 different schools, at both NC State and Wisconsin. I know people that are still involved with him. He is super focused, super professional. That sounds out of character, what you experienced, but as you said, you could have just caught the person on the wrong day, and that's something that I have to guard against. You want to make a judgment about somebody in a small snapshot of interacting with them. And it's really not fair to do that. And I wouldn't want to be judged every time someone approached me and maybe they didn't get the full attention they were hoping for, and I was brusque with them, or maybe I was in a hurry or busy or just not in the mood. I mean, you can risk coming off like an ass, but I would hate to be judged by that. I bet you if you had another chance with Russell, you'd see a different person. I think he's a class guy.
I'm sure he is. It's just, some of those moments. But, that was one. And I still look up to him because he does so much for his community. Like, I see him going out and helping in Africa. I think him and his wife did some stuff with rhinos and helping with rhino poaching. So that's really good.
He's just really also a serious guy, too. So he might not have understood that you'd done your homework, that you had the chops of someone much more experienced. Who is this kid? I just lost this game. I don't have any time for this. But
yeah. So
that was the one. He's the guy. What about the flip side? Who was the person that you walked away with having the biggest change in your perception or your opinion of them in a positive way after meeting them?
I'll be honest with you. Every person I've interviewed, I've never really thought of anyone as, this person's going to be a tough person to interview. They're not going to be, I would say Ezekiel Elliott. That was one that I thought it would kind of be like he would, in a way it was because, so he was talking to me and it was like a fun interview. And the problem was he was talking so softly, the microphone couldn't pick up what he was saying. So he was like barely whispering. But he was a really fun guy, and I didn't really expect that interview to be as much fun. I thought I would get a couple of smiles out of him, but not much more.
When did you figure out that there really is no reason to be intimidated by anybody you're interviewing,
Yeah.
because you see reporters of all ages. They might have been writers or broadcasters, but 25, 30 years, and you can still hear in their voice and see in their face that they're intimidated and asking questions of whether it's a Bill Belichick or Popovich, or name some coach who's had a reputation for being tough to deal with. The bottom line is, he's not going to punch you.
Mm-hmm.
He can't fire you. What's the worst that could happen if they act like a tool and don't give you really the intimidation thing shouldn't really come into play. And you seem to have gotten that. Not a lot of people at your age have that, because there's a definite like intimidation or worry factor. What are they going to think of me? Who cares?
And I'll tell
if
you
you don't get into this business and pursue it if you're obsessed with what people think of you. No. What can they say about me that's negative? And you put yourself out here right now. You put yourself out here on social media and you produce content, you're opening yourself up to people snickering at you, patting you on the head, laughing at you. You've had all that. You got to get over caring about that. And I think you have, which is good. And just keep that as the stage gets bigger for you and more eyes are on you, there's the more potential for being, trashed or hated on. But that doesn't matter. You shouldn't be concerned about that.
It's actually more so the security guards that I run into a lot of trouble with. So a lot of
Are you not obeying the rules? Are you not following the media guidelines, or why are they targeting you?
So
you don't look that menacing to me.
A lot of times I don't get access, actually. So when I don't get access, what I want to do is I still want to get the work in. So I'll go to hotels. I'll go to stand outside stadiums for hours and hours and hours. And for example, this year we went on a road trip to Atlanta and then Orlando, first LSU, Oklahoma, and then Michigan, Alabama, and the Under Armour All-American game. On the way back, we stopped in Kentucky. At the Alabama team hotel, we were just, going inside, talking to people, not really causing a disruption or anything. The security guard came up to us and he's like, "You're out of here right now. Don't say a word to me. You're getting out of here right now." So after we stood up to him, we said, "We didn't do anything wrong. This is a public hotel. It says welcome all fans." And so the next day we came back, and the next day we came back. And I would say my biggest fear when I first got in here was when you're 11 or 12 years old and you're surrounded by 6 or 7 security guards at times and they're kicking you out of something. That's kind of scary. But as times went on, I've learned that, they don't really have as much control as they try to have. And you have to walk into things with confidence and act like you've been there before.
Yeah, it's funny because the Alabama team hotel is one of the toughest things to penetrate. Alabama runs their deal with a very tight ship, and it comes from Saban. I've been in Alabama team hotels many, many times for meetings. You have to get through 16 checkpoints, up this escalator, down this hallway, behind this curtain. I mean, they try to keep the players walled off from everybody, media and fans. So you picked the toughest spot to try to get into, and those guys probably were just following orders about who to kick out. But I think you're right. Keep a cool head. Be respectful. Yeah. I mean, you don't need to start degrading some security guard. He's just doing his job. But I think you're going to find you get a lot more with kindness anyway.
And also, like, their job is to protect the players and keep people from getting to the players, and my job is to get to the players. There's a natural
but they don't screw around. Those team hotels, they don't screw around because there's all kinds of people that want to get near them. When you're talking about college athletes, you mentioned a postseason game. I mean, that is the time where there are all kinds of people from agents to wannabe agents to hustlers to merchandise, eBay people, autograph hounds, all kinds of, I would consider as your non-accredited media. I mean, there's all sorts of people, and they've made it a huge priority now to try to protect the players and wall them off from all that. So it's not personal. It's not even about the media as much as about anybody that's not authorized to be around there. In Alabama, they're not messing around. So
now, one question from the comments here from Nathan from Champagne Yankee Fitness. He has his own podcast too. That's a great show. You should go check that out and be on there. He said, most memorable college game you've covered.
That's hard because it's been about 30 years of them. But I think for different reasons, I covered the Orange Bowl early in my career when my alma mater, Colorado, won a piece of the national championship and they beat Notre Dame in 1990. And I was barely out of college, and they were horrendous when I was in college. That program was one of the worst in America. So to be able to be a reporter on the sidelines and get post-game interviews with Bill McCartney, the coach, just after watching them suffer for years was a real thrill. It's hard to top that memory, but in terms of other things later in my career, you know, being on the sidelines for the Texas USC Rose Bowl game and Vince Young running into the end zone, won the game, and that's considered by a lot of people the greatest college game ever. That would be right up there. I got a chance to call a lot of really exciting playoff games and Rose Bowl games, and you know, for me, you know, calling the USC Penn State Rose Bowl and then calling the Oklahoma Georgia Rose Bowl, which was a semifinal, which was just before the flu game that you referenced before, Georgia's championship game with Alabama. That's about as much fun as I've had. The Rose Bowl is a really special place. I don't know if you've been to a Rose Bowl before, but you know, just the setting there adds so much to the event. It's just like a Hollywood soundstage. It's amazing. And anybody that has had a chance to visit the Rose Bowl in person would nod their head, and most people that haven't want to go. But for me, I would say in football games, that would be the pinnacle. And Illinois did once make the Rose Bowl for your friend from Champaign, but I didn't call that game, but I did watch them lose.
Wow. One more question from the comments here. What was your college major and minor?
I didn't have a minor. I don't have a bachelor's degree. It was just broadcast journalism. Call it mass communication, whatever you want, different labels. You know, for me, I went to class. Don't get me wrong, I went to class, but what I learned outside of the classroom was a lot more important. So I could have been a major in anything as long as I had access to the equipment and I could check out the cameras and be part of the student TV and radio station. And they kind of kept those spots for the people who were in that major. So it was sort of necessary to study what I do to get access to that. But yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, going to class is important. Thank God nobody took my attendance. It was horrendous in college because I was doing a lot of jobs. You can understand this. Way more important to learn outside the classroom, make connections, and figure out what the business is about while you're in school to make sure that you're aiming for something that you want to do. Because a lot of people, when they pursue a job, even if like you want to do this since you can remember, you want to make sure that and I think you have a sense of this, but I think everybody should have a sense of this. It's the process, the day-to-day. You have to like the preparation for it. You have to like the day-to-day, not the idea of it. People fall in love with the idea of something, the idea of being on TV. But the reality is that the time on the air when the cameras are rolling, that's a tiny percentage of the time, right? So, like, you know, if you want to be a lawyer, you want to argue a case in court because that's really glamorous and that's cool to cross-examine somebody or make your case to the jury, understand how many hours were spent getting ready for that. And if you don't love that part of it, you don't excel at the part that first attracted you. So, like I said, what I majored in isn't as important as the fact that I just loved everything about the job and improving and growing in it.
And Graham Bensinger had something to say. What product do you use in your hair to make it look so pretty?
That's a very Graham Bensinger thing to say because he is a smartass. And it is all about snark versus substance. But the answer is, man, in quarantine, as much product as I can find. I am so in need of a haircut. I'm thinking about taking the clippers and attacking it myself. Yeah, is that your technique, like straight up the back like that?
Just
really?
Like that.
Man, you did that yourself? No.
No, I haven't done it myself. I was lucky enough to get a haircut a week before quarantine started. If I didn't do that, then yeah, I probably would have done that.
Yeah, but I'm someone that I get a haircut every 3 weeks like clockwork because I never wanted to go like look long or short. I wanted to kind of be similar looking. So I don't know what week this is, but it might be week 8. So it's way overdue. So thank you, Graham, for your insightful question. And I hope that your show delivers a higher level of knowledge than that question did. His show's actually really good. He's got an episode on Djokovic right now that I'm about to watch on YouTube. Yeah.
Shots fired? No? Graham,
Huh?
I'd love to have you on my show too. Okay, now I have a couple more things I want to talk to you before I let you go here. I have an
Yeah.
idea about to try to help COVID-19. So since I'm global kid media, I want to be able to help the kids who've been directly affected by the virus by losing a parent. And the way I want to do this is by getting some corporate partners that will be willing to donate about $1,000 to each family who has lost a parent to this virus, because they're the real victims of it. And
Mhm.
the reason I want to do this is because, number one, it's good publicity for a company, as well as they're doing something really great for the virus. Many athletes and celebrities will want to join in, and for every star interview I do, that's how the money will get there. And so I think that'll be pretty big, and most importantly, those families will be helped. What do you think about that idea?
No, I think it's awesome. I think that we're all looking for ways to help. And the problem is so big and it has so many different tiers that it's a struggle to figure out where to best put your money, whether that's just feeding people right now because there's so many hungry people, not just the people who have been victimized by the virus directly, but those who have lost their jobs and their livelihoods have been destroyed. There's so many people in that camp as well. I like your focus though, because you've gone right to the heart of the matter. Somebody has lost a parent to something that came out of nowhere and they couldn't see coming, and it's devastating. And there's no way to bring that person back with money, but obviously on top of the grief and the loss, there's all the financial pain and the uncertainty and the fear that goes along with that. So I think it's awesome. I think not just money, but maybe programs that support them. That's
Yeah.
because it's a long haul. I've lost both my parents. I lost one of my parents when I was a kid, and my mom lived to be a nice long age. But it's a very difficult, challenging stage in your life to lose a parent. And if you lost one to COVID-19, you lost somebody suddenly, and you didn't have time to prepare, and you couldn't have really seen it coming. So I think it's awesome. I mean, we'll speak going forward. Let me know how I can help with that. I think first of all, I think it's great that you had the idea, and that next step is trying to figure out sort of how to get corporate partners signed up. And I mean, it's hard to say no to that. That's a pretty great cause. I think that's a great idea to pursue it.
Well, bless you. Thank you so much for all the help and encouragement. And I really appreciate you coming on. And I look forward to talking more. And I love what
Yeah,
you do.
this won't be the last time we do this. I appreciate it, man. It's nice to see you face to face. I've enjoyed the content. You do a good job making people aware of what you're doing, and I think that's good. And I think you continue to. And I think what I sense from you is just a really great attitude. And it's an appetite to grow and get better, and a humility about it. But your excitement is really authentic, and that's cool, and that comes across in all the videos. So yeah, if I can help, let me know, and I'll keep watching the content, and we'll do this again at some point.
Appreciate it. And everyone tune in tomorrow for my interview with former bad boy Isiah Thomas. So we're going to be talking all things tomorrow. So make sure everyone tunes in for that. All right. I
I'll do
appreciate
it.
it. Take care. Stay safe.
Be well. Take care.